to avoid facing their own soul. And that's what betrayal often is, a person escaping themselves by sacrificing you. But tonight, this video is not about revenge. It's not about hate, and it's not about becoming cold-hearted. It's about understanding the painful psychological truth behind betrayal, and why the people who hurt us often become the greatest teachers of our lives. Because sometimes the person who broke your heart was the person who woke your soul up. And if you stay until the end of this video, you may realize something shocking. The betrayal that almost destroyed you may actually become the reason you finally transform into who you were meant to be. Part 1. The most dangerous people don't look dangerous. Before we continue deeper into this lesson, ask yourself something honestly. Have you ever ignored a red flag simply because you didn't want to lose someone? Because that's where betrayal usually begins. Not in deception, but in denial. Most people imagine betrayal dramatically, like a villain revealing their true face in one explosive moment. But real betrayal is quieter than that, more psychological, more subtle. It happens in small moments you dismiss. The delayed replies, the strange energy, the half-truths, the instinct in your chest whispering something feels wrong. But you silence it. Why? Because human beings are emotionally wired to protect attachment before truth. And that is dangerous. A drowning person will sometimes pull others underwater just to survive. In the same way, emotionally broken people often destroy loyal hearts just to avoid confronting their emptiness. That's why betrayal is so confusing. The same person who comforted you becomes the source of your pain. Nietzsche once wrote, "In individuals, insanity is rare, but in groups, parties, nations, and epochs, it is the rule." People become different when fear, insecurity, ego, or temptation takes control. Someone can genuinely love you and still betray you because they lack the emotional maturity to handle their own darkness. And maybe the hardest truth is this. Sometimes they didn't plan to hurt you. They were simply too weak to protect you from themselves. Think about modern relationships. People crave intimacy, but fear vulnerability. They want loyalty, but worship convenience. They want deep connection, but avoid difficult conversations. So instead of communicating honestly, they escape. They lie. They detach emotionally before physically leaving. And the victim? Usually the loyal one. The one who stayed genuine in a world obsessed with performance. But betrayal teaches a brutal lesson. Never let someone's potential blind you to their patterns. Because patterns reveal character more than promises ever will. And if someone repeatedly makes you feel anxious, confused, emotionally exhausted, or uncertain, your soul is already receiving information your heart refuses to accept. The tragedy is that many people only understand this after the damage is done, but perhaps awareness itself is the beginning of healing. Part 2. Betrayal doesn't just break your heart, it rewires your identity. After betrayal, something strange begins to happen. You laugh less naturally, you trust less freely, you overthink simple things, you read between lines that may not even exist. And suddenly love, something that once felt safe, begins to feel dangerous. Because betrayal is not just emotional pain, it is psychological fragmentation. The person who hurt you often takes something invisible with them, your certainty. Before betrayal, you moved through life differently. You believed words. You believed loyalty meant permanence. You believed that if your intentions were pure, the outcome would eventually be pure too. But betrayal introduces you to a terrifying realization. Not everyone thinks like you. And that realization changes people permanently. Carl Jung believed that every human being has a shadow, the hidden part of themselves they refuse to confront. The darker truth is that many people appear kind only because life has never tested their selfishness deeply enough, and when temptation arrives, when convenience arrives, when another option appears, their shadow finally speaks. That's why betrayal feels so personal. Because while you were building emotional safety, they were battling internal chaos you couldn't even see. And sadly, wounded people often create wounded people. A betrayed person can become emotionally distant, hyper-independent, cold, detached. Not because they enjoy becoming that way, but because the nervous system begins associating vulnerability with danger. Think about it. After heartbreak, even innocent situations feel threatening. A delayed text suddenly creates anxiety. A change in tone feels suspicious. Silence becomes terrifying. The mind starts preparing for abandonment before it even happens. This is why betrayal is so powerful psychologically. It doesn't just affect memory, it affects perception. And if you don't heal consciously, pain becomes identity. You stop saying, "I was betrayed," and begin saying, "I can't trust anyone." That single shift changes everything. Buddha once said, "Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die." But what many people misunderstand is this: unhealed betrayal isn't always loud anger. Sometimes it becomes quiet self-destruction. You isolate yourself, push good people away, pretend you no longer care. Convince yourself numbness is strength. But numbness is not peace, it is survival mode. Real healing begins when you stop asking, "Why did they do this to me?" and start asking, "What is this pain trying to teach me about myself?" Because betrayal reveals more than the character of others. It reveals the emotional wounds you ignored within yourself, the fear of abandonment, the need for validation, the tendency to overgive, the habit of loving people more than yourself. And perhaps this is the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes betrayal enters your life not only to hurt you, but to force you into self-awareness. The people who break us often expose the parts of ourselves we desperately needed to heal. And that realization changes everything. Part 3. Why letting go feels like losing a part of yourself. There's a moment after betrayal that nobody talks about, a silent moment. You're lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, and suddenly you realize you're not just grieving the person. You're grieving the future you imagined with them, the conversations that will never happen, the memories that will never exist, the version of your life that died quietly without warning. And that is why letting go feels unbearable. Because human beings do not attach only to people. We attach to meaning. A relationship is never just a person. It becomes routine, identity, emotional shelter, hope. And when betrayal destroys it, the mind reacts almost like physical withdrawal. Science even shows that emotional rejection activates the same brain regions as physical pain. In other words, heartbreak is not just in your head. Your body literally experiences loss like survival danger. That's why you check old messages even when you know it hurts, why you replay memories that destroy you, why part of you still waits for closure from someone who already chose distance. Your mind is searching for emotional resolution. But here's the painful truth most people eventually discover. Closure rarely comes from the person who hurt you. It comes from accepting that not everyone will explain the damage they caused, and that acceptance is one of the hardest philosophical lessons of adulthood. Lao Tzu once said, "When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be." But letting go feels terrifying because attachment creates identity. When someone becomes emotionally central to your life, your mind begins organizing itself around them. Your routines, thoughts, future plans, even your sense of self slowly intertwine with their existence. So when they leave, you feel psychologically amputated, and this is where many people become trapped. Instead of grieving honestly, they chase distractions. They seek rebounds, validation, attention, temporary numbness, anything to avoid sitting alone with themselves. But loneliness after betrayal serves a hidden purpose. It introduces you to yourself without emotional dependency. For the first time, you begin hearing your own thoughts clearly. You begin noticing how much of your worth was tied to another person's presence. You begin realizing how often you abandoned yourself while trying to keep someone else. And slowly, the pain starts transforming, not disappearing. Transforming, you begin understanding that letting go is not forgetting someone, it is releasing the illusion that they were responsible for your completeness. Because healing truly begins the moment you stop asking someone else to return the piece they took from you and start rebuilding it yourself. And perhaps that is the hidden gift inside heartbreak. The person who abandoned you accidentally forced you to meet yourself. Part 4. The final lesson. Betrayal can either destroy you or awaken you. If you've made it this far, then maybe you already understand something most people spend years avoiding. Betrayal changes you. The real question is, will it make you bitter or wiser? Because pain is strange. Two people can experience the same heartbreak and become completely different human beings afterward. One becomes consumed by resentment, suspicious of everyone, emotionally closed, forever trapped in the moment they were hurt. And the other, they evolve. Not because the pain was smaller, but because they chose to transform suffering into awareness instead of identity. This is what the ancient Stoics tried to teach. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." At first, those words sound almost cruel, because when someone betrays you, it feels like they stole your emotional stability completely. But over time, you realize something profound. Your suffering is not only coming from what happened, it is also coming from your resistance to accepting that it happened. And acceptance is not weakness. Acceptance is clarity. It is looking at reality without emotional illusion. Yes, they hurt you. Yes, they lied. Yes, they abandoned your trust, but your life cannot remain emotionally chained to someone who already left the battlefield. At some point, healing becomes a decision, a painful one, because growth after betrayal requires grieving not only the person, but the fantasy that they would change. The fantasy that loyalty guarantees loyalty in return. The fantasy that love alone can save emotionally immature people. And once those illusions collapse, something unexpected begins rising from the ruins: self-respect. You stop chasing closure, stop begging for explanations, stop shrinking yourself to keep temporary people comfortable. And for the first time, you understand the difference between attachment and peace. Attachment says, "I need you to feel whole." Peace says, "I value you, but I will not abandon myself to keep you." That realization changes everything. Because betrayal, strangely enough, becomes a mirror. It forces you to confront the deepest question of your life. Who are you when everything you depended on disappears? And maybe that is the final lesson this person came into your life to teach. Not trust, not love, not pain, but awakening. They revealed the strength you never knew you had. They exposed the emotional patterns you needed to outgrow. They forced you to stop searching for safety inside unstable people. And one day, the memory of them will no longer feel heavy, not because what happened stopped mattering, but because you finally realized your future matters more. Call to action. So if you are listening to this while carrying heartbreak, while questioning your worth, while trying to understand why someone you loved became a stranger, remember this: some people enter your life to walk beside you forever. Others enter your life to teach you a lesson your soul could not learn any other way. And sometimes, the most painful betrayals create the wisest versions of ourselves, because in the end, this person did not only break your heart, they introduced you to your power, and maybe that was the lesson all along. If this video spoke to something deep inside you, don't ignore that feeling, because healing begins the moment you stop running from your pain and start listening to what it came to teach you.